that's good lighting. We can just go up a notch. Hi! Yes, that's what I needed. Da-da-da. Yeah, can I turn the lights down? We're saving electricity. I have a fan on. I don't know. Hey! It's a 1:30? It's totally 1:30. This is a 1:29 or something. What is it? I don't know. What is the kitty with the waggy tail? It's totally 1:30. That's my little kitty cat clock says. Hi! So, it is hot. So hot where you all are? Because it's like, it is actually hot in a bunch of places, like all over the world. We're having a little heat now and rain. In Los Angeles, it's like on the news how hot it is. It's going into like hundreds of degrees. We do, however, have air conditioning. So we're very happy about that. And we have lots of cold drinks and an ice maker. And we'll be fine. I have the good like blinds, but I'm putting like the blackout drape stuff up over like a couple of the windows where the sun comes in the afternoons. I don't fry. But it'll be good. It'll be good. So, you loving this? This is yeah, it's kind of a dark navy with little flowers. I kind of went with the navy blouse kind of thing. Thought that might work. What is today? Besides honor and all get up. Today, because we did yesterday was Left-Handers Day, which we love. Today is the 14th, and it is National VJ Day, which is a big deal. Which was Victory over Japan Day. It was the 1945, August 14th. I think it's celebrated on the 15th in Europe. It's flying off my table, terrible. But it's in World War II when they said, okay, we did good on Japan there, so we're done. That with them, so that was good. It is also National Creamsicle Day. Now, I've always been kind of like, meh on creamsicles. I'm more a fudgesicle person. But I found these. These are, what are they called? Something pop. Oh, good pop. Good, wholesome, and clean. Oh, lovely. Good pop. They're sort of quasi-healthy. I guess it's got like real orange juice. Wow, look in this light. It nuclear pop. No, it's just kind of... This, indeed, it's sort of like a, I don't know, a health food. They didn't have any creamsicles at the store. I would have totally gotten a real, like, brand creamsicle. It's out of them, because it's creamsicle day. Everyone bought one. But this is some kind of foo-foo, goody-two-shoes organic thing. It's creamsicle. There's vanilla in there. Alright, I'm thirsty. Bomb. Oh, wow, that's good. That's really good. Hey, where's the cream? Wait. Ah, there it is. You can see there. It's a creamsicle. It's lovely. But I have a feeling there's going to be a mess of some kind here. That's right. This weekend is the thank you, Jennifer. This weekend is the 51st anniversary of Woodstock. Whoa. So, man, that's good. That's totally going to be a mess. Okay, no, I have plastic. I can put it on there. It'll be fine. And drink. Oh, yeah, I was talking about the stove yesterday. They did. I was worried they were going to, like, say, because they said from 7 to 1. I was worried they were going to say, we're delivering at 1:05 and it's going to take us an hour. And I was going to be like, No. They said from 7 to 1. So I got up, like, really early. So, like, ready to, like, move furniture so they can get the door all the way around, turn the corner, get in the kitchen, take everything off the stove. And no, I got a text at, like, 6:30 going, oh, yeah, no, we're going to be there at, what was it, 7:55. And they were all chop, and they're all very good. They're all very masked, and pardon me, and yes. And he came in, he looked at the stove, went back out, came and said, haul that thing out of here. Do you know how much dirt is under your stove? Have you cleaned under your stoves lately? I knew there was dirt under the stove. I knew that things fell down in there, and there was stuff, and I tried to vacuum out. But you really don't know until you take a stove that has been there since you moved in not 20 years ago. 17 years-ish. 16, 17 years. And it was there when you moved in. And you pull that out from the wall. Oh, it's not pretty. So I got the broom and the dustpan and the vacuum cleaner and, like, the Simple Green to scrub brush. I was like, can you give me a couple of minutes? Ugh. And I cleaned it up as much as I could before they brought the new one in. Because It was disgusting. Yeah, I moved the fridge the other day. That was unbelievable, the things that were under there. But the things under the stove were horrifying. So I cleaned that all up, and then they brought in this gorgeous little stove. It's the same size, little tiny stove, and very basic model. It doesn't like fly or have computers or anything. It cooks, but it is new, so the pilot light actually like goes on when it's supposed to, and it's lovely. It's clean and shiny. And they popped that thing in, and then he said, "Oh, turn it on, 400 degrees for 40 minutes, because the stuff in the fire, it'll smell funny. It's like when you first start it up, and you don't want to cook in it right. It's like, ew." So I cranked it up and turned it on. It was fine. It didn't smoke. It smelled perfectly fine. Awesome. So yeah, my new stove, and indeed, nobody had to give up their pony to get it. I didn't have to trade in my pony to get the stove. And it's good. It's a majestic stove. Who's going to do the cooking? Well, I am. That's what's going to happen. All right. It's so hot. I am so glad that it's creamsicle day. Wait, I hate to just like pause. Wait, I need a thing. I didn't get a big enough thing to put my creamsicle on, and it is totally going to like melt and create like a giant disaster here. I can tell, and it's going to fill the container. It's no terrible. Like, and now a word from our sponsor. Talk among yourselves. I'm just gonna grab a plate to be right there. Get a bowl. Yes. Okay. So much better now. Yeah, put that there. Put that there. Yes. Life is better now. If it gets too hot and my creamsicle totally melts, there will be no problem. Awesome. Souffle. That's right. Isn't it carrot? Isn't souffle day? It's some kind of souffle day. And I have a new oven now. I can totally make souffle. Okay. Oh, and Roswell and Morticia almost like each other. They're sleeping on the bed next to each other now. Excuse me. And they don't try to kill each other when they fight. Just chase each other around. So it's better. It's not complete. Morticia still goes, and looks at her like, "Why are you here?" But they don't like, you know. Roswell likes Morticia, actually. She kind of loves everyone. But Morticia's still a little, I wanted a pony. But it's much better. So much better. Do I need more light? I do need more light. So I have 1,000 lights. Ooh, wow, fill light. Look at that. Wow. So things are progressing. As we know, we've already heard that, like, Almanzo is in town and saving everybody with the weed, and Laura's, like, 15, and she's going to be a teacher. So, this episode is teaching courtship and marriage, because they all kind of went whoosh, because back then, you were, like, a teenager, and it's like, get a job, get married, boom. It's like, what just happened? Oh, it's a gas stove. I like the gas stoves. I can cook on an electric, but I really like the gas. In December of 1882, which I believe, yes, that's when my grandmother was born. Because, yeah, my mom was 40 when I was born, and Grandma was 40 when she was born, so it's like, yeah, 1922, so it's about, yeah, my grandmother was born in 1882. In 1882, Laura Ingalls recited half the story of American history at a school exhibition in De Smet. Oh, yeah, that was a great sequence where they did, like, the history of the world, part 1 and 2. She had to get up, and Ida Brown had to do that. It was hysterical. Yeah, Ida Brown recited the other half. So that was true. She did not make that up. She really did get up and recite the entire history of the United States in front of a whole bunch of people. Since Laura and Ida were among the oldest and best students, they had been assigned this role in the evening performance of recitations, oral readings, and demonstrations of learning. Laura was nervous and always a trifle bashful in crowds, but the applause was thunderous when she finished her part of the program. Many people were impressed by Laura's performance in the school exhibition, including the Ingalls' good friends from Silver Lake, Robert and Ellie Boast. They just keep popping up. One day, just before Christmas, Mr. Boast and his cousin, Mr. Bucci, visited at the Ingalls' home. To Laura's surprise, they had stopped not to see Pa, but her. Laura was even more amazed to learn that Mr. Bucci was a school board member from a little settlement 12 miles south of De Smet, and his school district wanted Laura to teach a 2-month winter term for them. And I remember 12 miles was like, oh, it's like days to go somewhere. Laura's 16th birthday was not until February. She's 15. She was 11. She was working in a hotel, making beds and, like, slinging food. It was like, what? It's installing melting. Very good though. Putting her to work again. We thought it was shocking when she was 15 and started working. Of course, now we know she was actually, like, waiting on tables and making beds and scrubbing floors at 11. Laura said not until February, and she knew 16 was the legal age for a beginning teacher. But Mr. Bucci simply told Laura not to mention that fact. If she would agree to teach at the Bucci school, he would arrange with the county superintendent to examine her immediately. Teachers were hard to find, and Mr. Bucci wanted Laura for his school. By the end of the day, Laura held in her hand both a teaching certificate and a contract to teach the Bucci school at $20 a month during January and February, twice as much as her mother had earned 26 years earlier. Laura had to live with Mr. and Mrs. Bucci and their young son while she taught. Yeah, and that's where things went, like, south, as it were. Yeah, that's the thing. He's like, don't even tell anybody. We won't tell anyone you're not 16. They were hard to come by, and he'd just seen this whole thing where she recited the entire history of the United States. And I thought, okay, it's hard to find a teacher. It's even harder at this point to find a good teacher. And this girl, well, she might be 16, she's close enough, actually knows what she's doing. She knows more than half the people I could hire that are older than her. I could go hire somebody who's 22 and they don't know half of the book that she knows. So I should snag this kid to come teach the class while I can. Mm-hmm. Oh, alphabetical. Unfortunately, she had to move in with the Buccis. Mr. Bucci was very nice. Mrs. Bucci, not so much. Mrs. Bucci was unfriendly to Laura. Okay, that's putting it mildly. And like some prairie women, depressed by the isolation and ceaseless winds blowing over the empty land. Laura was anxious to leave their claim shanty each morning to report to the schoolhouse, which was an abandoned homesteader shanty a half-mile away. They were definitely hard up in that town. Her students numbered only 5. Laura sometimes felt she was failing in her work of teaching her first school, but she plodded through the days. She patterned school days after classes in De Smet and studied her own lessons while her pupils learned theirs. Can you imagine being like 16 and like, 11th grade, and you're like finishing, even if you're like super smart and you're in like the 11th grade, and like finishing up your 11th grade stuff and studying for your exams you're going to be having in the 12th grade next year while trying to teach a group of kids who are like elementary, junior high level. And you're like, hang on, I don't know this part yet. I haven't read that part of the book. It'd be terrible. While also sleeping on a couch at the crazy lady's house, because she was very, she didn't be kind to her. She threatened her with a knife, for heaven's sakes. All right. Poor things. Laura felt so unwelcome at the Bucci house that she dreaded spending a weekend with her miserable hosts. Secretly, she hoped Pa would come out and take her home, but 12 miles was a long journey in the winter. As her first week of teaching ended, Laura was astonished to hear sleigh bells ringing outside the schoolhouse. She was even more amazed to see that behind a team of brown Morgan horses, wrapped in a buffalo skin coat, was Almanzo Wilder. Drove all the 12 miles out in the snow to pick her up. Yes, he was madly in love. Yeah, they're not. A guy is not going to drive 12 miles then being a long way, all that this in the snow to come get you, to pick you up, take you to bed, unless he's really hooked on you. You know how it is. If a boyfriend doesn't really love you, it's like, honey, could you drive me to the airport? No, I have video games to go play. But if a guy's in love with you, it's like, I'll drive you all the way there. Don't take a plane. We'll drive cross country. Yeah. Oh, man, so drive all the way out there for. Laura was confused at Almanzo's offer to take her home and return her to the Bucci household on Sunday. She was a little clueless. She was a little like, boys? Wait, what? Oh, wait, this guy's in love with me. No idea. Poor girl did not know. It was almost too cold to speak on the ride home, and Laura was tongue-tied and bashful as well, considering herself poor company. All through the 8 weeks at Bucci School, Almanzo took Laura back and forth on the weekends, patiently and silently braving temperatures often below zero. Much as I longed to go home for those 2 days, I did not want to be unfair or deceitful, Laura recalled. Once she told Almanzo bluntly that when school was out, she would no longer ride with him, but he continued to fetch her on Fridays. Just saying. After the homesick weeks of teaching were finished, Laura was proud to receive her pay, which he gave to Paul. She had done a fine job at the Bucci School. Her students had learned from her and respected her. Laura knew that she could find another teaching job easily, but she would not go so far in the winter again. Back in De Smet, Laura returned to school. Her teacher, Professor Van Owen, always demanded the best his students could produce. He was convinced that Laura Ingalls was his most promising student, and told Pa that she had a wonderful mind and should be given every opportunity for an education. Professor Owen especially stressed writing skills with his classes, requiring them to compose essays about what they thought and read. Laura's compositions were always exceptional, so well done that Professor Owen used her work as examples to show the whole school. He was very proud of her. So there you go. It was obvious, yes, Laura knew how to write. It was clear she was showing talent and ability in the writing department even then. So it wasn't like she just suddenly started writing. It was like, oh, I wrote these books. No, she knew, yeah, they knew she knew how to write. But how weird you go and you teach school for like a year, and then you gotta go back to high school. That would feel very, very strange. Though she had taught, Laura was still a schoolgirl, I see there, and liked the same fun and pastimes that her friends Minnie and Mara and Ida did. When a skating rink opened in De Smet, a skating rink, Laura could not resist skipping school to spend an afternoon there, and she was surprised to see that many of her classmates had the same idea. The next day, Professor Owen solemnly questioned his students about their whereabouts, and all had to answer that they had been at the rink. Professor Owen told Laura he expected her to be a good example to her class, and spoke so sincerely that she decided never to miss school again if she could avoid it. De Smet had grown quickly since 1880, and there were many activities during the winters when the Ingalls family lived in town. They were involved in the Congregational Church and Sunday School. There were church suppers and socials and Christmas tree celebrations to attend. Remember when Laura hadn't even seen a tree? Now just parties every week. A literary society was started, and almost everyone in town went to the Friday night meetings. Laura was asked to parties, by Ernie Perry and Lawyer Thomas, but admitted much later she secretly admired Cap Garland and Fred Gilbert, who were already courting her girlfriends. Everybody liked Cap Garland. That was a running thing. Apparently Cap Garland was really good looking, and everybody had a crush on Cap Garland. I was following her. So it was amazing that yeah, she would have married, I'm sure, Cap Garland, but he was dating everybody. Laura and her friends all thought a young Swedish boy named Oscar Ruhl was a romantic figure. He worked as a hired man for the Wilder brothers, Royal and Almanzo. So there's Almanzo she's going to marry, but she's eyeing the Swedish kid he's got working for him. Well, Oscar from Sweden. Yeah, well, that would be pretty cute. This is completely melting. That is how hot it is in here, even the air conditioning. My little creamsicle bar is just going to disappear. But delicious. Okay, it's totally falling apart. It was good. Oscar Almanzo seemed to have forgotten Laura's telling him that she would not ride with him after she finished at the Bucci School. No, he just didn't care. He continued to appear at Pa's door with his fine Morgan horses, asking Laura for sleigh rides. In the spring, when the Ingalls family moved back to the homestead, Almanzo arrived there with a shiny black buggy. On their rides over the prairie, Laura learned about Almanzo. He was 10 years older than she was, and was a homesteader with 320 acres of land. That's a lot. His family lived in Spring Valley, Minnesota, but before that, the Wilders had farmed in Malone, New York. There, Almanzo had developed his love for Morgan horses, which Laura shared. He had worked hard for his Morgan team, and then he had saved for a driving buggy. On one of their drives together, Laura and Almanzo discussed their names. Almanzo's parents called him Manzo. Del Zaldabo. Manzo. Laura said she thought both nicknames... Oh, and Royal called him Manny. Laura said she thought both nicknames were ugly and silly. She told Almanzo that she would call him Manly. Ooh, Manly. And to this day, in 2020, people are calling Dean Butler Manly. Yes. Manly said that his oldest sister was named Laura, and he had never liked the name, so he wanted a nickname for her too. When Laura said her middle name was Elizabeth, Manly decided to call her Bessie. Remember in the show she's Beth, which is, short Elizabeth. There are people called Beth who are Elizabeth, but I guess Bessie they thought was weird. She became Beth, but he called her Bessie. So they were Manly and Bessie because they both thought, well, he had a sister named Laura, and she thought Almanzo was an odd name, so there you go. During the spring of 1884, Laura taught her second school. It was called the Perry School and was just a short walk south of Pa's homestead land. Also, it was much nicer. The Perry School was quite pleasant. Laura's pay was $25 a month for April, May, and June, and she taught only 3 students. Laura said that helping them with their lessons was a pleasure. Yes, these were nice kids. While the children studied, Laura worked in her own school books. Again, at the end of the day, she walked across the green springtime prairie to Pa's house on the claim. So now that's pretty good. An extra $5 a month. It's only 3 kids, not 5. It's not the dead of winter, and you get over there. You just walk to it, and it was, clearly a better deal than the Bucci school in a shack. Yeah, and I remember in the book, it was like they'd gone out and bought her a desk and all this stuff. Laura was so ambitious that she often worked on Saturdays for the dressmaker in De Smet. She sewed well and worked quickly and was in much demand to help fill orders for new clothes the townspeople needed. Laura earned clothes for herself in this way, using her wages to buy materials and patterns and hats to wear to church and when Manly came courting. Pa had bought Ma a new sewing machine. It was a huge deal. It's a huge deal then to have a sewing machine. And Ma marveled at its speed. For years, she had stitched clothing for Pa herself and the 4 girls by hand, and now she welcomed the convenience of using the new machine. It was just literally in this building. The whir of the sewing machine filled the house on the homestead while Ma worked. And we're talking not even an electric sewing machine, just we got a nice little pedal thing going there. And it was still amazing for them to have that convenience. Another sound filled the house too. With Laura's salary from the Perry School and some money that Pa added, a pump organ was purchased for Mary. The family knew that Mary excelled in music lessons at the College for the Blind and wanted her to continue practicing at home on her summer vacations. Pa added a sitting room to the claim shanty to make room for the organ, and then the shanty could rightfully be called a house. The farm was prospering, and though Pa sometimes wished they could move west again, he realized that he and Ma were settled permanently in Dakota Territory. He actually added on an entire room to put the organ in. That's amazing. Ma's summer vacations were exciting. Ma's. I wish he went on vacation. So Mary, remember about the organ and Mary didn't even come home that summer? Terrible. Mary's summer vacations were exciting times for the Ingalls family. School trained her to function independently in the world, so Mary made the long railroad journeys from Vinton, Iowa, to De Smet alone. She talked happily of her friends at school, her studies, the literary society she belonged to, and the many crafts she had mastered. Her careful beadwork pieces, tiny beads strung on fine wire, were a marvel to Mary's family and friends. She brought home presents for everyone, watch cases, jewelry, bookmarks, vases, baskets, all created with the skill of her sensitive fingers. She used to make little vases, all out of beads. Almanzo Weiler continued to come to Pa's home to visit Laura. During the week, Almanzo was busy working on his farm north of De Smet, but on Sundays, he appeared with horses and buggy asking Laura to go riding. Sometimes Pa and Ma disapproved of his horses. Almanzo once brought a frisky, untamed team named Skip and Barnum. Weren't there 3 chapters about Barnum walks? Barnum, he told Laura, was named for P.T. Barnum, the famous circus showman. Laura had to dash to jump into the buggy because the team could not be stopped for long. but she loved the fast horses that led her and Manly over the prairie. Laura and Manly drove to the Twin Lakes, Henry and Thompson, and to Spirit Lake, with its ancient Indian burial mounds. They raced through De Smet, and people stared. They sometimes drove across the prairie, covering 65 miles in an afternoon. Now, wait a minute. We just had that whole thing where, like, she's teaching school, and it's a whole whopping 12 miles, and they're like, oh, nobody can possibly come out because it's 12 miles. And that whole thing of taking the train from Walnut Grove to Tracy, which is, what is that, 17 miles or something? And yeah, here they are. Boom, 65 miles. That was like having your own jet or something then. That was like, oh, he has like might as well have a private plane. 65 miles in an afternoon. Manly told Laura there was not another man in town who would try to drive Skip and Barnum. Laura remembered that Pa said Manly was trying to kill me, but it was the most fun I'd ever had. I kept going with Manly. People began to take it seriously, Laura recalled. Although Laura was independent, she now did nothing to discourage Manly from his attentions. They went to De Smet's big 4th of July celebration in 1884 with fireworks and races. They attended a singing school held at the Congregational Church and went to dances and ice cream socials. Oh, ice cream socials. You're definitely dating if you go to the ice cream social. One night, as Manly and Laura rode back to Pa's homestead, Manly asked Laura if she would like an engagement ring. She was 17, and he was 27. Oh, well, at least she's getting a little older. Yikes. They were old enough to marry and try homesteading on their own. Laura accepted a gold engagement ring from Manly, set with pearls and garnets. When she showed it to Ma said, Pa and I haven't been blind. We've been expecting it. Pa just smiled when he saw the ring on Laura's finger. Yeah, Pa liked Almanza. It's in the show, Pa is like super hysterical, jealous, and terrified. And Laura said, don't live in there. 10 minutes. Who is this man? He beats him up at one point when he thinks something terrible has happened, when he rescues Laura from where we've been wrestling in the mud. And she's in his bathrobe. Pa goes berserk and flips over the table and beats him up. And Ma is like, she's telling Laura, right now you just got to act more mature. Your father's going to come around. You just got to let him see that you're grown up and that you... It was completely the opposite. In the books, in real life, Ma was a little concerned and saw that Pa really liked it. Pa kept saying, oh, yeah, why don't you come on over? He was very friendly with Almanza. He was encouraging this. Go, Laura, yeah, Almanza's here. And when they first went out in the books, at one point, Ma says, she's 15! And, like, flips out. And Pa's like, it's okay, it's Almanza. He drove her home from church. And she's like, there's a grown man is driving her home from church. He's 15. And he's like, it's Almanza. We know him. He's fine. He's not going to do anything. He's Almanza. So Pa was totally pro Almanza and the whole relationship. And Ma was quite concerned because she was much too young. She thinks she's going to run off and get married at 15. And whereas on the show, Ma was in Laura's corner. Yay, romance, Almanza. And Pa was like, I'm going to kill him. So they switched it up, you know. Yeah. Well, so, so she gets a gorgeous ring. And you know, it wasn't diamonds, because, you know, diamond rings, that didn't happen until, like, oh gosh, was that the 30s? Diamonds as an engagement ring is a modern invention. I mean, engagement rings have been around for a while, but the idea that you're supposed to get a diamond, and that was the, I know it sounds awful to say, it's like Mother's Day was invented to sell cards, but in diamond rings, the De Beers Diamond Company, it kind of got a whole advertising campaign. Hey, when you buy someone an engagement ring, why don't you get them a diamond? And like really put, and it wasn't really till the 20s, 30s, the beginning of the 20th century that a diamond ring became like a big deal. And now everyone just assumes that your engagement is diamond ring, but she had pearls and rubies and things there, and it was lovely. Garnets, not even rubies, just garnets. But, which is a very lovely combination, really. But yeah, people didn't have diamonds then. When school started in the fall of 1884, it was in a big new 2-story building. De Smet had already outgrown its first school. Laura and Carrie were both in the high school room upstairs, while 7-year-old Grace studied with the first-floor primary students. Imagine Carrie in high school. Did she ever get to high school in the show? Our school wasn't that fancy on the show. Pa had decided to sell his store on Main Street, so he improved the house on the homestead, making it solid enough to keep the family snug in winter, which was a lot of work because that thing was not. They would live on the farm year-round, and Pa promised to take the girls to school each day. He was often busy in town anyway, doing carpentry work or filing court cases as part of his job as Justice of the Peace. Pa was down at the courthouse. He also served as town clerk. Oh, good Lord, he did everything. He also served as town clerk, deputy sheriff, street commissioner, and a school board and church board member. That's right. He was street commissioner. So if he had a pothole, hey, Ingalls, we got potholes over here. Too funny. Not long after Laura started her last year of school, Manly and Royal Wilder left on a long trip. Royal had opened a variety store in De Smet, and he outfitted a peddler's wagon with goods to sell or trade. The brothers planned to go to the big fair called the New Orleans Exposition in Louisiana. We were starting to have like world's fairs and expositions and get into stuff like that. They wanted to go to the New Orleans Exposition, Louisiana, and then travel north again to visit their parents in Spring Valley, Minnesota. Laura did not expect to see Manly again until the springtime. It was perhaps during the weeks when Manly was away that Laura wrote poetry again, this time expressing how she felt as her fiancé traveled so far from Dakota. Now, is this going to be more Dorothy Parker smart face stuff here? Well, that's good. So is she going to be smart mouth poem? Sarah, let's see. Lonely, oh, I am so lonely, far from thee. Days come and go, and are all the same to me. For thou, my beloved one, no more I see, no more I hear thy footstep, strong and free, nor meet thee neath the scarlet maple tree. O my beloved one, wherever thou mayest be, wandering on a foreign shore or on the sea, come, I recall thee, home to me. Well, he wasn't on a foreign shore. He just went to Minnesota to visit his folks. Went to a fair in Louisiana. It's not a foreign shore. Good heavens. But clearly she was in love with him now. This is good. This is good because it was kind of, a little one-sided there. So Manly surprised all the Ingalls family when he appeared at the door of their homestead house on Christmas Eve. He, too, was lonely for Laura. I couldn't stay all winter, he explained. And then, as Laura said, he kissed me before all the folks. Public display of affection. Laura wanted to teach school one more term to help Pa and Ma one last time before she married. Back then, yes, only single women could teach school. Now, we did not follow that on the show because we had Mrs. Garvey and everybody taught. Ma taught. Mrs. Oleson taught. Do you remember the episode where Mrs. Oleson taught school? And she taught French. Oh, good. Oh, my God. It was hilarious. Mrs. Oleson got hold of the school for like a week and made them wear uniforms and had French lessons. And what was she usually going on? Avez-vous un parapluie bleu? So good. And Catherine McGregor, of course, in real life spoke French. So it was like hilarious. Right? Okay. In the spring of 1885, she agreed to teach the Wilkins School north of De Smet. This meant that once more Laura would need to leave her own class before the term was over. Professor Owen was troubled when Laura told him of her plans. His eyes filled with tears as he begged Laura to complete the school year. He had wanted Laura's class to graduate together, but knew that only she would pass the examinations. So he held the others back for another year. He held the whole school back so that Laura could graduate with her class. Who does this? Who does it? I mean, you could say, well, I'm going to advance you. No, he held the school back because he said she would pass and they wouldn't. He held the others back for another year. Professor Owen pleaded with Laura to give up teaching so he could graduate her from high school by herself. Could you, she was already a teacher, but it's like, could you graduate high school, please? Laura felt she must keep her promises to teach the Wilkins School, but as she admitted, this was a great unhappiness to me. I had always so longed for an education and had hoped to at least graduate from high school. She's been teaching longer than her ma taught, because she's teaching like a whole year longer than her mother taught. She still hasn't gotten out of high school. But teaching the Wilkins School was a pleasure. Her pay was $30 a month. Keeps going up. No, that's very good. $30 a month for April, May, and June. She lived with the Wilkins family, who were cheerful and pleasant, unlike the Bucci's. Her pupils learned quickly, and every Friday, Manly came riding over the prairie to take her home for the weekend. He was busy improving his land and building a house where they would live when they were married. When Laura's duties at the Wilkins school were over, there were long summer days to spend with Mary, who was home for vacation. Again, they walked over Pa's homestead land and experienced the sunsets together. Laura told her sister that next summer there would be 2 homes to visit. By then, Laura would be settled on Manly's farm. Now, Mary kind of gave her some little grief about that, because remember, they were walking, and Mary's like, "Are you really marrying that guy?" I was like, "Excuse me." Okay. And then she's like, "Well, you won't be home. I mean, what? I'm gonna." And she's like, "Well, you'll come over to our house up the street, and you'll visit us. What's the problem?" So Mary gave her major attitude about Alonzo. I don't know, jealous? Maybe. Okay, Laura and Manly had planned to be married when the fall harvest work was done, but they heard that bossy Eliza Jane Wilder wanted to plan a big wedding for them. Okay, that's like something that would happen on the show. So we didn't do that on the show. That would have been a good bit, to have the Eliza Jane going crazy and trying to plan a bit of wedding. That's funny. So she was going to do it. I mean, okay, she got like fired from the school. Now she's trying to plan a wedding. She is like a trouble spot. Neither Laura nor Manly wanted Eliza Jane's help, so they decided to marry sooner than they expected to. They did not want the big wedding. And she was like bridesmaid Zilla, gonna pick everything out. Very quietly, on the morning of August 25th, 1885, well, boy, we'll be celebrating their anniversary soon, Laura and Almanzo drove to the Reverend Brown's house and were married. Laura had asked for a change in the wording of the wedding ceremony. She objected to the use of the word obey. "Even if I tried, I do not think I could obey anyone against my better judgment," she explained. Both Reverend Brown and Manly agreed with her. Well, that's a nice scene in the book, too, where she says, "I really can't do the obey thing." And Almanza's like, "I really didn't want that anyway. I really hadn't planned on having my wife obey me. That's like weird." No. And then he even said, "Oh no, Reverend Brown, he's an abolitionist. He's all about, he was very big against slavery. He doesn't believe in any of that. He doesn't think people should say obey in the wedding vows. He thinks it's old fashioned." So even in the 1800s, people were saying, my parents were married in the 50s and they didn't say obey. It depends what church you go to. Sometimes it's not even in there. But yes, apparently Reverend Brown was very modern, progressive, said, "No, we don't say obey at our church." And Almanzo was like, So, yay! After their wedding, Mr. and Mrs. Almanzo Wilder drove back to Pa and Ma's for dinner. Then Manly and Laura said goodbye to Pa and Ma and Carrie and Grace. Mary had returned to school in Vinton. She missed the wedding. As they had so many times before, Laura and Manly rode across the prairie and through De Smet. 2 miles north, they came to the little house Manly had built for them. That was basically the wedding party. They got married and then they went over and they had a little dinner and a little party in the house. Laura Ingalls Wilder was no longer a pioneer girl. She was a homesteader's wife. And she thought happily, "I had a house and a home of my own." Yay. What was the vows on the show? Oh, Nellie and Percival. Yeah, I don't think we had any obey. Could you imagine Nellie agreeing to obey? Even Percival? Yeah. No. And then remember, Percival was super, super liberated and progressive, because when they had the episode that was like the ERA on the Prairie episode where that woman came and said, women don't really have the right to own property. 1800s, and the men still own everything, which Mrs. Olds was like, "Oh, no, we're not having that." And so she was trying to get started to do state laws get passed that women could own property, ultimately going to, right to vote and all that stuff. And all the women in Walnut Grove said, "Well, that's a good idea." And some of the men got upset, and the women, they all moved into Nellie's hotel. And the thing was, Percival was the first man to sign and say, "I think it's a great idea, and of course they can own property, and I think they should vote too." He was like, so Percival wouldn't have made Nellie say obey. So that's good. Well, this is lovely. Oh, someone said did they say love, honor, and obey? I'm sure it didn't work. Like I said, my mother didn't even agree to obey, and that was like 1950. What's it? Did not. Well, so tomorrow, it's Saturday tomorrow. Tomorrow will be Saturday, and it'll be, we want to see the world. So there will still be excitement and things happening. Tomorrow will be, did all my paper fall down there? Oh, no, it's right here. Yeah, it's like little tables and chairs and things. Tomorrow will be the 15th. Well, that's a big religious holiday too. What's it? The Ascension, I believe. Oh, National Leathercraft. Oh, that's good. Okay, so yeah, there's some fabulous days with lots of interesting food involved in them coming up, and so we'll definitely do that. Oh, Black Cat Appreciation Day is coming up soon, so we'll get Morticia over and see if she wants to come on camera for that one. Lots. There's so many ice cream days here, which is great because it's hot, so that makes sense. There's a Spumoni day. Love Spumoni. Okay. Yeah, no, I have no idea. I'm like looking ahead going, really? Who knew? Okay. This National Day thing is all new to me. I'm like, the Assumption, thank you. I'm like, that's right. It is the Feast of the Assumption. There you go, see? So there you are. I have a new stove. Wow, I haven't used it yet. It's just warmed it up. So I'll probably be baking some stuff. And it's lovely. It's the correct temperature and stuff. My old stove was getting a little funky. I'd like set that. I'd go like, that's much hotter than it should be. It was like, so this will be lovely, and I won't have to worry about my cookies burning. So there you are. I will see you tomorrow. So everybody, take care and wash your hands and wear your masks and call your friends and hey, read a book. Oh, good. Somebody else loves Spumoni. See you tomorrow.